Are there key battles which we can identify that led to the fall of Rome, or more precisely to the fall of the Western Roman Empire? I think yes. I think we can identify some key battles that were so disastrous that they would set a catastrophic chain reaction into motion, which would culminate in the dissolution of the Western Roman state. We shall analyze the most disastrous battles of the surviving Eastern Roman Empire in another video. But here are 5 key battles that were so disastrous for Rome that they led to the fall of the Western Roman Empire. As a fan of this channel, you probably have a fascination with Roman history. My friend Hadrian brings history to life through animated stories. His latest video explores the story of Aeneas and the founding of Rome. His videos are really well done and definitely worth a watch. Link to the video in the description. So then let's start. 5. Battle of the Savin, 388. It is truly fascinating that some of the most disastrous battles of the late Roman Empire were not fought between Rome and the Germanic invaders, but between the Romans themselves. Indeed, one could argue that the constant civil wars that Rome fought with ever greater frequency in the 4th and 5th centuries were what ultimately caused the empire's demise. And one such battle was fought in 388 AD between the forces of the Eastern Roman Empire under the Emperor Theodosius and the forces of the Western Roman Empire under the forces of the self-proclaimed Emperor Magnus Maximus. Maximus had rebelled just a few years prior in Britannia, as happened so often in this troublesome province of the Roman Empire. The Eastern Empire employed a huge force in this fight. 40,000 Gothic foederati alone were employed, as well as a sizable navy and of course many thousands of comitatenses and limitanei soldiers. The exact size of the forces is unknown, but it was possibly around 50,000 versus 50,000 troops. Maximus lost after 2 months of bitter fighting. He was killed soon thereafter, and the Western Roman Empire would later pay the price. The many thousands of Western Romans that had been killed in the battle, especially the expensive elite comitatenses, were very difficult to recruit in those times, for reasons explained in this video. And so the Western Roman army was weakened in this battle, which would have dire consequences just a few years later, as I will explain shortly. 4. Battle of Adrianople, 378. The Battle of Adrianople was disastrous because of the chain reaction of events which it would set into motion. In 378, a large army of the Eastern Roman Empire under command of the Emperor Valens faced the forces of the Goths and Alani under their kings. Valens made some grave tactical mistakes, especially not waiting for reinforcements from his western colleague Gratian proved a very bad decision. Valens lost and at least half of the Roman army was killed, so at least about 15,000 of the total of 30,000 Romans that had fought in the battle. This defeat would allow the Goths to sack and plunder the Balkans in the following years with impunity, and it would later allow them to settle in Illyricum and establish their own quasi-independent kingdom. Worse, it would give rise to Alaric, who would go on to harass the Western Roman Empire and who would even manage to sack Rome in 410. It would also allow the Goths to then establish their own kingdom in Aquitania on Western Roman territory. These Visigoths would then continue harassing the Western Roman Empire until the very end. So the real disaster that the Roman defeat at Adrianople caused was felt over the long term, over the coming decades, and ironically it was felt in the Western Roman Empire, but not as much in the East. It is ironic that mostly the failures of the Eastern Roman Empire would actually doom the Western Roman Empire. Of course, the blow to Roman morale and loss of Roman lives at Adrianople was also very severe and told the barbarians one thing: that the Romans were not as strong as thought and that they could be defeated. This set a dangerous precedent which the other barbarian nations then sought to imitate, often with success. And if you are a Rome nerd like me, and chances are pretty high that you are if you are watching this video, then you might be interested in the incredible rings and other Roman accessories which the SPQR Shop is building. They make legionary rings, they make rings with different themes, they even make coin replicas, statues, pendants, attributes and terracottas. And the most incredible thing is that they handcraft every single piece. That's right, this is really high quality handcrafted material. There's really no better present for yourself or someone you know who might be a Rome fan. I put the link to their shop in the video description and into the pinned comment, and with this link you can get a 10% rebate on every purchase if you type in the rebate code Maiorianus. So go and check out their assortment, it's really quite incredible. 3. Battle of the Catalonian Plains in 451. Now why would a Roman victory, which is often wrongly cited as the last great Western Roman victory, why would that battle be disastrous for the Roman Empire? Did Aetius and his Romans not show for one of the last times that the Roman Empire was still a force to be reckoned with? Was Attila the Hun, the scourge of God, not stopped and the myth of his invincibility shattered for all eternity? Well, I personally think that even though the Western Romans under Aetius and the confederacy of allied Germanic nations won at Catalaunum in 451 AD, that still the very fact that it came to this battle was a disaster for the Western Roman Empire. I personally see it as a Pyrrhic victory. Yes, the immediate threat of Attila was stopped, however, the losses for the Western Roman Empire must have been great. In those times, with the loss of the revenue from the rich province of Africa that had fallen 12 years prior to the Vandals, there simply was not enough money anymore for the Western Empire to maintain a large high-quality Comitatensis field army. Some scholars, such as even Schultheis, estimate that the total army size of the Western Roman Empire, around 450, only numbered 20,500 Comitatenses and 18,000 Limitanei. The revenue from Africa alone could have mounted an additional 40,000 infantry and 20,000 cavalry. And we can assume that Aetius employed a sizable portion of those 20,000 Comitatenses and 18,000 Limitanei for the defeat of Attila, and it is likely that many of them died in that battle. Because only a year later, Attila invaded Italy and besieged Aquileia, razing it almost to the ground. Other cities in the Po Valley were destroyed as well by the Huns, and Aetius was powerless to stop this. Where were his Comitatenses and Limitanei then? I think that he did not have enough troops anymore by that time. This is why he was basically not able to stop Attila's advance on his own. Therefore, I think that a large part of what was left of the Western Roman army was either destroyed or disbanded shortly after the Battle of Catalaunum, which is also implied by the lack of military resistance against the Vandals sacking Rome in 455. And that the Emperor Majorian was forced to recruit a completely barbarian army in 458 for his reconquest of the Western Roman Empire. There was no mention anymore of Comitatenses and Limitanei. Therefore, the often cited victory of Aetius at Catalaunum was in reality most likely a disaster for the Western Roman Empire. And please consider supporting this channel via Patreon or YouTube membership, because I really need your help in order to be able to continue this work on late Roman history. Without your support, I don't know how much longer I can continue this channel, because as you can imagine, the YouTube algorithm does not exactly push a niche topic such as late Roman history. Alternatively, you can help this channel by buying my merch directly here on YouTube. I have created a merch store with some cool or funny or weird late Roman merch, which you can buy directly here via YouTube in the video description. Thank you very much. 2. Battle of the Fus River in 394 AD. In September of 394, the forces of the Western Roman Empire under Emperor Eugenius and his Magister Militum Arbogast were facing the forces of the Eastern Roman Empire under Theodosius and his very able general Stilicho. Both armies numbered about 40 to 50,000 troops. This battle is often cited as the last fight of paganism, which is not entirely correct, as I showed in this video here. But far more important than the religious implications were the disastrous consequences for the Western Roman Empire. Eugenius and Arbogast lost, and thousands upon thousands of high-quality Western Roman troops were killed as a consequence, the same way as only 6 years earlier when Magnus Maximus and his Western army was defeated. Twice in only 6 years had the Western Empire's forces been brutally destroyed by the East and lost probably tens of thousands of infantrymen from the Comitatenses. In a time in which recruiting was getting more and more difficult due to the debasement of the currency and lower incentives to join the army, and possibly also because of the disillusionment of the Western Romans and thus unwillingness to risk their lives for the empire. So as a direct consequence of the battles of the Save and the Frigidus, the Western Empire was severely weakened, and therefore Stilicho, just 8 years after the Battle of the Frigidus, had to withdraw Limitanei border troops from the Rhine frontier for the defense of Italy. He managed to defend Italy, but the depleted Rhine frontier was then not able to hinder the Germanic tribes of pouring into Gaul in 407, which would then be the beginning of the end for the Western Roman Empire. So I personally think that had the battles of the Save and Frigidus not happened, the Rhine frontier would have been successfully defended in 407, and the Western Empire would not have fallen, or if, then much later and in a different way. It was this brutal double whammy of Save and Frigidus which weakened the Western Roman Empire so much that it would simply not have enough men 12 years later for the defense of the Rhine frontier. 1. Battle of Cape Bon in 468. For me personally, the most disastrous battle of the late Western Roman Empire was the Battle of Cape Bon. This was really the last time that the Western Roman Empire could have been saved, and when this failed, so also failed the last best hope to keep the line of Roman emperors alive in the West. Sometime in 468, the Eastern Roman Empire sent a huge fleet in order to conquer the Vandal kingdom and restore control of Africa to the Western Roman Empire. But instead of saving the Western Roman Empire, it ended in disaster, due to reasons about which I talked in great detail in this video here. It was actually one of the largest naval battles of antiquity, with 1,100 involved ships, most of which were built by the Eastern Empire, as the West by that time did not have the revenue anymore, and only 7 years earlier had the last Western Roman fleet of 300 ships been destroyed at Carthago Nova. So all hopes of the Romans lasted on this expedition. Marcellinus of Dalmatia also participated, possibly contributing another 100 ships. But the commander of the mission, Basiliscus, was very incompetent, and so the whole thing ended in disaster. Half of the fleet was destroyed by Vandal fireships in a surprise attack, and so Basiliscus retreated with his remaining ships, and the attack was called off. And so not only died the last hopes of the Western Roman Empire, and not only was Africa lost, but this disaster bankrupted the Eastern Empire for decades. This is why the East was later unable to effectively help the Western Empire, and it is therefore absolutely no coincidence that the line of Western emperors ended only 8 or 12 years after the Battle of Cape Bon, depending if you see Romulus Augustus or Julius Nepos as the last Western Roman emperor. Honorable mentions: the battle or the disaster of Cartagena in 460. We don't know for sure if Maiorianus' fleet was burned by traitors or if it was destroyed in a Vandal surprise attack, but traitors were probably involved in either case. If the fleet was destroyed in a surprise attack, then this was the Battle of Portus Iliquitanus near Carthago Nova, today known as Cartagena, but more correctly the port is at today's Elche in Spain. When this Maiorianus' fleet was destroyed in 460, it was an insane blow to the Western Roman Empire, from which it would never recover. Battle of Carthage in 439. When Carthage fell to the Vandals in 439, so did Rome's richest province fall, and so did much of its grain supply and tax revenue. The disaster was, as I mentioned before, that without the revenue from Africa, the Western Empire's ability to maintain a large army was severely crippled, and therefore this was a huge disaster for Rome. Battle of Rimini 432. The civil war between Flavius Aetius, Bonifacius and Flavius Felix came at the worst possible time. Instead of uniting against the Vandals, they fought each other, which culminated in the Battle of Ariminum, today's Rimini, where Bonifacius was victorious against Aetius but died later from his wounds. We can imagine how many Romans needlessly died in this senseless civil war that came at the worst possible time. Battle of the Rhine frontier, early 407. When was the beginning of the end for the Western Roman Empire? For me it was in January 407, when huge masses of Germanic tribes breached the Rhine frontier. Because of that event, they were able to later establish their kingdoms on Western Roman territory, which would ultimately break the neck of the Western Imperium. The Frankish foederati were initially actually able to defend the Rhine frontier, but because of the battles of the Save and Frigidus, most Roman limitanei had been withdrawn, and so sooner or later the Franks lost against the too many Germanic nations, and thus began the fall of the West. Battle of Placentia or Ravena in 476. This was the final battle of the Western Roman Empire. When Orestes refused to give Odoacer and his Germanic soldiers 1/3 of the land in Italy, he rebelled, and there was a battle outside of Ravenna or Placentia, in which the last few remaining Roman garrisons lost, because by that time there were almost no real Roman troops left, and the rest is history. So these were the, in my opinion, greatest disasters of late Western Roman history, but of course you are welcome to let me know your favorites. Oh, and don't forget to check out Hadrian's channel. As I said, he makes really excellent high quality history videos, some of which are about the late Roman Empire. And please like and subscribe so that you won't miss any future videos on the fascinating era of the late Roman Empire. And please consider supporting my work on Patreon or via a YouTube membership, because the long-term sustainability of this channel really depends on your support. And I would like to thank Antonio Brandao for rejoining as Sol Invictus. Thank you so much, Antonio, for your continued amazing support. The same also goes for Titino Zan. Thank you so much, Titino Zan, for rejoining as Sol Invictus and supporting this channel in such a generous way. And I would like to also thank Whit Lamson, who upgraded to Sol Invictus. Thank you so much, Whit Lamson, for supporting this channel in such a generous form. It's thanks to people like you that this channel is made possible. I cannot thank you enough. And I would also like to thank Kazan, who joined as a Kaisar supporter. Thank you so much, Kazan, for your generous support. I really cannot thank you enough. And if you want to learn more about who was to blame for the disaster at Cape Bon, you can watch this video here in the upper right corner. But if you want to learn more about why Maiorianus' fleet was destroyed, you can watch the other video in the lower right corner. I say thanks again to all friends of Roman history, gratias tibiago and bene valete.